So welcome to this brief overview of Samurai Sharpen, our new plugin for doing sharpening, obviously. It's a plugin for After Effects, Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, at least initially. In this case, I'm going to be using After Effects, as you can probably see. And so let's dive into it. So on the surface, it's a fairly standard sharpening plugin. You have your amount and your radius, very similar to what you would find in Unsharp Mask. And in this case, we have the settings cranked up so you can kind of see what Samurai is doing, just showing the sharpening overall. And so that's on, that's off. So amount is simply the amount of sharpening that's happening. The radius is what allows you to accentuate certain levels of detail. So for really fine detail, you might want to have this set to say 0.5. For something with larger details, you might want to have this set up to maybe 2. You can certainly crank it up and get some more creative effects, but that's not really, what it's completely designed to do. It's more designed to do regular sharpening, but certainly you can crank the radius up and get these creative effects for sure. And then we get into edge mask strength. Now this is where it starts getting interesting with Samurai. This is determining how much of an edge-aware filter the plugin is, how much edge-aware sharpening is happening. We can turn on show sharpening, and this will show us all of the edges that are getting sharpening. Some of the obvious things like the guitar strings, in between the fingers, these are all things that we probably want to be a little bit sharper. However, there are lots of things like the guitar here and the skin tones and stuff like that that we really don't want to be sharp. So with edge mask strength, we can increase this and it will take out a lot of that. It will just focus on the edges and prevent sharpening from happening with smaller, insignificant details. Now, for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to turn this off because we want to see the sharpening as much as possible. But just realize this is really a key parameter in creating a really nice sharpening look for your footage. So we'll turn show sharpening off. And we'll go down to the mask section. And this is one of the other really nifty things about Samurai is that you can mask off just the shadows or the highlight areas. Shadow areas are probably going to be a little bit more common because that's where you see a lot of noise. And there's not usually a lot of detail in the shadows, and so there's not really a lot of stuff you want to sharpen, and there is a lot of stuff that you don't want to sharpen. So we're going to turn on the shadow mask. We'll turn on show mask so we can see what is being masked out. By default, it's not picking up a lot here, so we're going to increase the black midpoint, increase the black level. And this works, these controls work a lot like as if you were in curves and had 2 initial points in the black area. And if you take a look at the beta manual, it'll have a very good description of what exactly is going on here. It's not really so easy to show in the video. It works a little bit better with the manual. So definitely download that and take a look at it. But you can see that as I adjust this, I am protecting more of the areas or less. And so I really just want to keep it to mostly just the dark areas. And so what happens is if I turn off show mask and we look at the before and after, so I'm going to take a snapshot here of with the mask turned on, and with it turned off, you can see that you're getting all sorts of sharpening of the noise in these areas. So if I turn it on, those don't get sharpened. If I turn it off, they do get sharpened. On, off. So the shadow mask is a really powerful way of protecting certain areas that you don't want sharpening in. And the same works for highlights. This is not such a problem for this image. We can see it a little bit in the inlay here. If I use highlight mask on, and let's take a look at the show mask and make some adjustments to it. And then we'll Turn show mask off. And you can see that if I use highlight mask on and off, some of the detail gets blown out. So if I turn this off, you can see that a lot of this goes to white. And if I turn it on, it brings back that detail. Not such a big deal here, but if you have footage that has, like, say, white clouds in it, let's stay zoomed in. Quite often, that's one situation where you would want to use the highlight mask to protect the clouds from getting blown out and losing the detail that's already there. So these are all very powerful ways of preventing certain areas in your image from getting any sharpening at all. Because, of course, it's very easy to over-sharpen video and end up with stuff that looks worse than where you started. And so Samurai has a lot of ways to help you deal with that. Now, one other way of doing that is with the blend shadow opacity and blend highlight opacity. And every time you sharpen, you have a light and a dark side to the edge. That's, sharpening happens by increasing the contrast around the edge. And so you'll see in this case, again, we're over sharpening, but you can see there's a dark side to it and a light side. And what this does is allow you to adjust the opacity of those light or dark sides independently. So if I adjust the highlight opacity, you can see that it really dials down that side of it. And this makes for some very subtle adjustments to your sharpening. And we can take a snapshot of that, increase it back up to what it was, and look at the before and after. So it's just giving you a lot more control. And again, this is maybe a little bit too much. You wouldn't want to turn the opacity down quite so much, but just to show you what's going on with it. It does allow you to just make these very fine-tuning adjustments to the sharpening. And of course the same can be said for the shadow areas. We can dial those down and get a little bit less darkness on the dark side of the halo. And of course you can take it all the way down and get some very odd looks which you don't want. So that's the basics of Samurai. Again, you have a mount and radius, which works a lot like unsharp mask. You have the edge mask strength, which allows you to turn it into an edge-aware sharpening filter. You have the blend shadow and highlight opacity, which allows you to adjust the halos, the dark and light sides of the halos independently. And then you have the shadow mask and highlight mask, which allows you to protect certain areas of the image from getting any sharpening at all. So check out the beta manual for a little bit more info, especially on the shadow and highlight mask. Pretty important. And if you have any questions or want to report a bug, which we would love to hear from you about if you do run into any problems, you can email Tor, T-O-R, @digitalanarchy.com, and he will help you out. And thanks again for trying out Samurai. And please let us know what you think of it.